Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sisters of the Strange. I'm Shae.
And I'm Landrey. And this week we are back with part 2 of the witch trials.
Woo!
Yeah, I hope that you liked week 1. I definitely have done so much research on this. I don't even know how to think straight anymore.
Yeah.
I think there's been multiple times in the last 2 weeks that my conversations when I'm around people is about the witch trials.
Listen, I know exactly how you feel.
With the Menendez brothers?
Menendez brothers. Yeah, it was my entire personality trait for like months.
Yeah.
3 months, probably.
It's definitely how I've been with the witch trials. And I know I'm going to Salem in a couple of weeks, so I know I'm going to be there and be like, wrong. I researched this.
Actually, according to my calculations.
Yeah, for real. Pull my glasses down.
I can't see anything below my nose right now, so.
It's fine. You look cute.
Thanks. Yeah, I walked into the studio and Landry looks like a freaking hot-ass demon over there, and I was wearing a sweatshirt. And I was like, what?
I didn't even think to tell her. I just pulled out. I was thinking about it last night. I was like, oh, because we were going to originally dress up for all of October. And then I was like, I'm going on a trip. I'm not spending my money on dressing up. I'm going to spend my money on my trip. Right. So sorry. And then last night I was like, I have so many leftover Halloween outfits at my house. Like I had a tutu. I didn't bring it, but I have a black tutu. I have this whole setup. I have Aaron, since he was Hades, I have his whole suit thing he wore, but would have been massive on us, so can't wear his. But I have his Oompa Loompa costume. I almost brought it, and then I was like, but what are we going to do with that?
Dude, your Willy Wonka costume is top tier.
Yeah, I almost brought, that's what the top hat is from.
Oh,
but
okay.
I think I threw away the wig and the glasses. I can't find either of those. But yeah, I was Willy Wonka one year, and I made my husband be an Oompa Loompa.
Which is hilarious.
And then the next year... Last year we weren't anything because something was going on. We didn't dress up at all. We just got Landon.
Oh, yeah.
The year before we got married.
Yeah.
The year before that we were Men in Black and Little Dog was an alien.
Oh, yeah. That was a good one, too.
So I do have a Men in Black costume that will make an appearance soon.
Yeah.
So.
Sick.
Yeah.
I wish I had all my stuff. I don't. It's all at my mom's house.
We could just wear our prom dresses.
I do have that. I have my wedding dress.
I have mine as well.
I have my wedding dress. So yeah, I just threw on this masquerade mask that Landry brought because she's so generous.
Yeah, I had that from we were Hades and my husband and I were Hades and Persephone, which is why I have these horns. I think I wore this cape. I wore that mask. He had a black mask, so there's a black one over there as well. I don't know where his horns went, but I had his horns for a while as well.
I very clearly am emulating Persephone right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Of course.
I can feel it just running through my veins.
I am Persephone.
I am Persephone.
Daughter of Demeter. Queen of the underworld. I love Greek mythology.
Period.
You're like, Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of a quick recap of last week's episode in case you're not watching them. Like if you watched it actually last week and are waiting on the new episode, which I think a lot of people are at that point where they just wait on us every week now, which I think is absolutely crazy.
Yes.
It's so cool, but so crazy.
And people going back through and seeing people catching up and then they're like, oh, I'm caught up now.
Yes.
And you're like, ah.
Yeah. Yesterday we had in the middle of the night, so I think they're not from around here. They were commenting every episode in the middle of the night, and I was like, they're binging us. I want to know where they are because it was 2 a.m. I was like, there's no way they're listening to us at 2 a.m. Here. Yeah. On a Saturday night. No.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, I can't say anything because I was awake at home alone till 2 a.m. just I was doing research for this, making sure it was all how I wanted it to be. So I can't say I'm doing anything more fun
than binging us.
Yeah. But I went to Crazy Water yesterday, which is a festival that Mineral Wells has. And it's just, you walk around, they have vendors, almost like Peach Festival here. Yeah. And I got stared at really hard by one group of people. And I was like, I think they might watch the podcast.
Do you know?
I don't know why else they're staring at me because I was dressed just I had on just jeans and a t-shirt.
Yeah, normal.
Yeah, and I was walking around with my brother and Macy and Cooper and my mom, and I was like...
I feel that sometimes too.
So if you just heard 5 minutes of really annoying noise, it's the AC unit. We figured out that we don't have to turn it off, which we thought in the beginning, and we were sweating at the beginning of summer. We've learned you can put it in sleep mode and it gets quieter.
It's quieter.
It doesn't yell. But yeah, so I was like, I wonder if they're staring at me. So if you ever do actually listen to us and actually think you see us in person, come talk to us.
Please.
I think it's so fun. I think that's so cool.
It's so cool. I feel that too sometimes, like whenever you feel like somebody's looking at you, I'm like, are you staring at me because I'm ugly, or are you staring at me because you watch my podcast? Like, it can only go one or two ways.
Which one is it? Let me know.
Do I have something on my face?
You just need to have like a sign that says ugly podcast. Like the yes, no, the rating signs. Same.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So our little recap, the witch trials, basically a bunch of assholes killing people at the end of the day. But no, it was a bunch of like power hungry people who were taking advantage of women basically, and just the position they put themselves in. Is there any other recap to that? I think that's pretty much it.
No, I mean, yeah, it just that mass hysteria of torture and fear.
Yeah.
That something otherworldly was
that the devil was amongst them. And guess what? He's here today.
In the flesh.
Yeah, I'm right here. But I think that that pretty much sums it up. Like, people were scared. A lot of them were scared because they actually believed that they're like I would say more of like the lowly villagers, like what we'd call like middle class, I guess now, and below that were the people that were genuinely scared that there was witches and evil going on amongst their communities because their crops were failing and the weather was weird. And there was just a lot of like sickness and death going around. So I think at some rate, some people were actually scared. But I think the people who were in charge of all of this, that were actually doing the executions, holding the trials, were more people that were higher up and more power hungry. And I think they were doing it for different reasons.
Yeah.
So just go back and listen. But that's a little recap because we're going into England and New England today. And it kind of follows that same path of just there's death, there's weather, there's all sorts of just like small things going on that people are automatically like, oh, well, they're a witch.
I'm so excited for this part because this flows so perfectly into what I'm going to be covering this week too.
Really?
Yeah.
And like, I think for me, part of this, the reason I started with divination is just if any of them could have understood divination, it would have really helped them all out.
Yeah. Where would we be today?
Yeah. Not with millions of people, not millions, but thousands of people burned or hung for witchcraft. So also, as I mentioned in the last episode, King James was the king of Scotland, and he was the man, or the hungry witch hunt guy that just like wanted to kill everybody and thought everyone was out to get him and against him and blah, 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 which there actually was a lot of plots against him. Like there was like a gunpowder plot against him where they like wanted to blow up where he was and things like that, because he clearly wasn't this amazing man.
Yeah, he had a lot of enemies.
Yeah, lots of enemies. And so he was the king of Scotland, and now he's the king of England. So he's just carrying over his stuff to England, basically, which just carries that fear, and that like the wildfire just continues to spread. So one of the earliest and most notorious witch trials that took place in England actually occurred in 1612, and it was known as the Pendle witch trial.
Okay.
The saga of the Pendle witches began on March 18th, 1612, when Alison, her last name, I would, if I was just reading it, I would read it as Device, but I think that it's Devis. If you were like actually overseas and had a different accent than us, I think it would sound more like that. It's going to be easier for me to say Device other than trying to do that. So I'm going to say Device, but I think it's the Devis family or the Devises family or something like that. It's not Device, but I'm going to read it as Device.
I love it.
Even her name, Alison, is Alizon. Alison instead.
Okay.
Which I kind of like. Kinda cool.
That's cool.
So she was a young woman in her early 20s, and she was walking along a road and came across a man named John Law. He was an elderly peddler, which kind of means he was like a traveling salesman. And Alison had asked him to sell her some of his pens, which were an important item back in those days. They were used for like sewing, but they also were believed to have magical and healing properties. And Law refused to give them to her or sell her any, either because he didn't want to open his pack or because he didn't trust that she would pay. and she cursed him out of anger. She walked away and was like, screw that guy, like, middle finger to you. Should have given me your freaking pins, like, blah, 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 you know, whatever. But she probably did this very often. Her whole family is known to be beggars, which is probably why he was able to look at her and be like, I'm not going to sell her these. She's not actually going to pay. She's going to grab them and run. Like,
okay.
Let's be for real right now. And so what was different about this encounter than ones she probably had in the past where she cursed people is that after he said no and she gave him her slew of curse words, he fell to the ground and was struck with paralysis down one side of his body and was suddenly unable to speak.
Oop.
Which today would just be a stroke.
Correct.
But back then, you know.
Coincidence?
Coincidence? I think not. But if you've watched the new Monsters yet, or
I
not,
have not.
you know, the new version of it, whatever, which it's a very known fact, so I'm not really ruining anything.
No.
But Ed Gein's mom had a stroke, and she ended up dying from her stroke. Like, she had a stroke and then got so worked up that she like reignited her stroke and died from it.
Ooh, ouch.
And so it's like, he could have gotten so worked up that it makes that blood vessel, you know, pop or whatever. And now he's having a stroke. So could have been easily explained, but she was a witch.
Of course she was.
Yeah. So this terrified Allison, like, oh shit, I actually have these powers that I, you know.
Yeah.
So she ran away and did not help him. But at some point he did get like helped to a local inn. And when he got to the inn, he sent his son a letter, and his son is in Halifax, which is where they're originally from, and sent for his son like, hey, this girl bewitched me. I need you to come get her and get her to release this curse from me. So go get her. And so his son Abraham received the letter on the 21st and was super alarmed, and he quickly departed and went there and found his father. He did actually get Allison to go back there, and he said, cast your spell off of my father. And she agreed to lift the curse and even broke down in remorse when she saw just his state of just frailness.
Aww.
And begged for his forgiveness, which then automatically claimed her as guilty.
Oh, yeah.
So she was automatically guilty.
She was like, I'm so sorry that I did this to you.
Yeah. So on March 30th, just a few days later, Abraham, which is John's son, paid a visit to Pendles, which is the city, to their local magistrate, Roger Nowell, Nowell, Nowell. Nowell. We're going to go in. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. We're going to go with like Noel because it's easier. Noel. But he reached out to the local magistrate at his home and repeated his father's account of the events from March 18th. But he made a slight little change to the story. Instead of explaining that John just refused Allison these pins, he claimed that his father did give them to her. So now, even though Allison had already pretty much admitted to witchcraft, the refusal of the pins gave it more justification as to why she would do that.
Yeah.
And so instead, John basically took that opportunity away just to make it seem like she just wanted to be evil.
You dirty little liar.
Yeah. If none of this had happened, none of this would have started.
Wow.
So just that alone. So then Roger Nowell had Allison Device brought in for questioning the very next day. She repeated her story of how she met John Law on the road. She asked him for some pens and he had refused, so she cursed him. However, Allison also told Nowell, just how she enacted the curse. She said her familiar, who was a black dog, came to her after Law had told her no and asked, "What wouldst thou have me do to that man?" "What canst thou do to him?" Allison asked her familiar. "I can lame him," the dog replied. Allison agreed, and before the peddler was gone 40 rods further down the road, he fell lame. However, Allison's confession of her wrongdoing provoked further admissions. When Nowell asked her exactly what this black dog was, she explained it was a spirit to whom she had sold her soul 2 years previously for the power to do anything she would.
So she was just spilling the beans.
Yeah, she was like, well, here you go.
Okay, girl, go off.
In an attempt to save herself, she told Nowell that since the incident with the peddler, she has now renounced her familiar. Like, I no longer have my familiar, so I'm doing good now. You know, like, I'm not going to do this again.
Okay.
It was my familiar who did it. So if I don't have him anymore, then I can't just do it on my own, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So she also tried to blame it on her 80-year-old grandmother, claiming her grandmother has corrupted her.
Oop. Throwing me under that bus, girl.
Yeah, she's like, that old girl, her fault.
She ain't got long left anyway. It was her fault.
Yeah, this ain't on me. So her grandmother was Elizabeth Southers, who was also known as Old Demdike throughout like the whole entire like community. I don't know what the
What does that
relation.
mean?
I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea. Because their family is the Devises or the Devices, but they also are known as the Dimdikes. And so I'm not sure what that means. I would have to look it up.
Okay, but she's the old one.
She's the old one. So
Okay.
there's old Dimdike and then there's Mother Dimdike, which is Allison's mom.
Okay.
But we're getting into it because they all live together. So she was known as Old Dimdike. She was the matriarch of the family and lived with her granddaughter Allison, her daughter Elizabeth, and her grandchildren James and Janet. So
I like that name.
Janet,
Yeah.
it's Jennet.
I love that.
It's interesting. There's more than one in the story, and I'm like, oh, I guess it was a popular name back then.
I've never heard that before.
I hadn't either until this research.
I love that.
Yeah. Nice. Good job, Elizabeth, for naming your daughter Janet.
Somebody different.
Yeah. But so Old Dimdike was the matriarch of the family, which kind of already made them an outcast because most families were ruled by men.
Correct.
And they were ruled by a woman. So that already kind of set them apart. But apparently, Old Dimdike was blind, so Allison often had to act as her guide when they were out and about on the town. And the family had no regular occupation other than begging, as I've already mentioned, and some casual labor. But Old Dimdike was also known to be a local healer and was often called a cunning woman, which I mentioned in the last episode that people went from being just like a cunning woman in town that you sought after to help you heal your animals or to help you. You know, if your goat or your cow wasn't producing milk, then you would like call upon them to like help.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of one of those same situations where it's like, oh, yeah, they were always kind of an outcast, but now they're about to get turned into witches just
Because
for being this outcast who has practiced magic. And which means if you've practiced good magic, you can also practice bad magic, which means you're a bad person.
Correct.
So,
yeah.
Okay. So she had been suspected of using witchcraft for over 50 years. But after blaming her own grandmother, Allison then also shifted the spotlight from her own family to a local rival family known as the Chaddocks family. So Allison claims that she believes Old Chaddocks, which is the matriarch of that family, so it's another family that is ruled by a matriarch and is another family that was known to be healers, so it's their rival family in town, right? They blame the death, so Allison blames the death of her father on the old matriarch of the Chaddocks family.
Oh boy.
Because it was claimed that, well, like at some point in time when Allison was a child, someone had broken into their house and stolen like their grain meal and their linens. And so Allison's dad at this point in time was still alive. And so he made a deal with Old Chaddocks that he would pay her for her grain and things like that to be able to provide that for his family. But then he stopped paying her. And then shortly after that, he fell ill and died. And so it was because she was also known as being like a healer and a witch in town that it was her fault because he wasn't paying her anymore. And then he died.
Tea.
Yeah. Which.
Wow.
Yes.
The drama.
Yeah. So even him on his deathbed blamed Old Chaddocks for this. So Allison had now given Roger Nowell sufficient evidence to suggest a huge nest of witches existed in this area. Clearly, because that's just two families alone that have multiple kids in that family.
Yeah.
And so on April 2nd, he and Allison traveled to his town south of Pendle Hill and interviewed Old Dimdike and Old Chaddocks at the house of a local gentleman named James Walsey. Both of the old women freely... Why am I talking so weird?
Ooh.
What in the wheel? Both of the old women freely admitted to practicing witchcraft. Their tales had several elements in common. Mother Dimdike had made her pact with her familiar Tib when she had turned 60 some 20 years earlier, so she was already in her 80s.
Wow.
And then Old Chaddocks had contracted her own familiar named Fancy 5 years after that. So both familiars could take the form of a young man and offered to do the woman's bidding and ensure they wanted for nothing in return for their souls. From then on, both women had the power to cure and kill, but both were adamant that they only ever ill-wished those who harmed them.
Fair.
The magic used by both Old Dimdike and Old Chaddocks combined folk magic and Roman Catholic prayers, which all of the Catholic Reformation or Protestant Reformation stuff is still going on. That's still a religious war everywhere at this time. So the Catholic prayers, as I mentioned before, is not something that's really looked upon while using in your healing practices and things like that. But the first kind of magic was a form of sympathetic magic, which involved making and using items that resemble the people they wish to influence over. So almost like making a voodoo doll. The second involved charms that combined folk beliefs with elements of Catholic prayers. Old Dimdike described how she made a clay model of her victims, which she used as the focus of her will. Once the clay was shaped to resemble the victim, Dimdike dried it. Then, when she wanted them to be ill in any one place more than the other, She would drive in a pin or a thorn in the place she wanted to cause illness. If she wanted any part of their body to consume away, she would break it off and burn it.
Oh.
And if she was to kill someone, Demdike took a similar action. She just incinerated the whole figure.
Okay, girl.
Okay, so then Old Chaddocks had used another kind of folk magic to curse a cow belonging to John Nutter, according to Alison Devis. The old woman had performed a charm over a pail of milk from the cow with 2 sticks across it. Chaddocks provided Roger Nowell with a rendition of one of her charms, which shows a combination of sympathetic magic and Christian prayer. And then it goes into like the whole prayer that she gave, and it is just mixing together like Catholic references versus from here, and it's really weird. So I'm not even going to read it because it literally says like 5 pater nesters. Like that doesn't make any sense, and we're not even going to talk about that. But
it sounds terrible.
Yeah, she just mixes it all up. So
she says, "Phasmatos
incendia." Yeah, that would be a lot easier for me to say. But either way, Nowell had now heard enough. He had Alison Devis, Old Demdike, Old Chaddocks, and Chaddocks' daughter Anne Redfern arrested that very day and sent to Lancaster Castle to await trial. It is also said that Lancaster Castle was 40 miles away from Pendle Hill, and they had to walk that.
Ooh.
An 80-something-year-old woman had to walk that.
That's wild.
Yeah, I would have died.
I also would have died. That's like from walking here to Fort Worth.
Yeah, no.
Past downtown Fort Worth.
Absolutely not.
Whew.
And I don't know how many breaks or rests or any of that they got.
Probably
know?
to 0.
Yeah, none. It also came to Nowell's attention that later that month, on Good Friday, so April 10th, there had been a meeting at the home of the Devises or Devices. Even though Allison and her grandmother were gone, her mom still lived there, and her brother and her sister. So Janet, James, and then her mom Elizabeth. So the meeting was probably super innocent and just like a meeting to maybe like try and raise awareness that the family was gone over here, that they needed help or whatever it may be. But a lot of the people saw it as them gathering their witches.
Correct.
So after that, on April 27th, Nowell interviewed James, which is the brother who's still at home. And he admitted that it had taken place and he had supplied a stolen sheep to feed all of the guests. He also explained the purpose of the meeting. He said first that the witches had gathered to name Alison Device's familiar spirit for her since she was in prison, which I don't really know exactly what that means. But I don't know if that means they needed to like take care of her familiar and they needed to figure out where it was or who it was.
Yeah.
Maybe. Second, they were answering a call for vengeance. There was a witch a town over who had gone to trial. She was acquitted, but she was asking them for help to curse her accuser.
Oh boy.
So then the third meeting, like the third item of business in the meeting, was apparently the witches had also met to go over their plot to blow up Lancaster Castle to rescue the incarcerated witches.
So this brother is just...
He's like, here you go.
Saying all this stuff?
He's just letting it out there.
Okay.
He also supplied the names of the witches that were in attendance, but his little sister, Jeanette, also named them, and none of the names matched.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we're just talking out of our ass.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why are we doing that?
I don't know what the goal is here. So during these revelations, James Device admitted that like his sister Allison, he had also been initiated into witchcraft by his grandmother. And at the same time, he implicated his mother. So he said he had seen Elizabeth Device, which is his mom, making clay puppets and witnessed her familiar, which was a dog named Ball. He also confirmed she had aided his grandmother and other witches in malicious activities. So due to this, James and his mother were now quickly also put in Lancaster Castle in the dungeon. And out of those witches named at the meeting, only those on James's list had been arrested. They didn't arrest the ones out of Janet's list, only James's list. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the pressure of being incarcerated and put in this small cell with no ventilation or proper sanitation in the company of 9 other people proved too much for the old Demdike's age, and she died. So she got to avoid trial and any conviction of witchcraft, even though she was like the number one person they were blaming. Yeah.
Wonderful.
This made it to where her old rival, Old Chaddocks, just started talking away. So she gave the name of a girl named Margaret Pearson. And so now Margaret Pearson's also in the dungeon. Another name came up of Isabel Roby. So she also is now. So there's like 10 or 11 people in the dungeons right now. But trials of the accused could only occur when a local or like official judge would come to visit town. And they only did that twice a year. So all of the witches were in this dungeon for at least 5 months before they went to court.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine that?
That
a
sounds
dungeon
terrible.
for 5 months. Can you imagine what you look like?
Oh,
how
yeah.
you smell? You probably haven't seen light in days. So now all of a sudden when you're coming out of this dungeon and you see the light and you're getting brought in front of a court. Yeah. And you're getting brought in front of courtrooms and stuff looking like that. Like, yeah, you look like a witch. What do you mean?
Yeah.
So eventually the trial of the Pendle witches did begin on August 18th of 1612. And the first day of trial was for Old Chaddocks, Elizabeth Device, and James Device. So as I mentioned, the way that these women probably looked and the way that James looked was horrible. How would you look after being in a dungeon?
They're in bad shape.
You know, like 5-6 months.
Yeah.
So it said that James had actually tried to kill himself in prison and he was unable to stand at the time of his trial. He was so severely injured that he had to be held up throughout the proceedings because he just was in such bad shape from being down there like that. The court charged Old Chaddocks with the murder of John Nutter, to which she pleaded not guilty despite having admitted to it in an earlier testimony. Elizabeth, which is the mom, also pleaded not guilty to the deaths of James and John Robinson, who she had been said to have killed because they insulted her. James Device was likewise charged. The chief witness against Elizabeth and James was their 9-year-old Janet Davis, who was the daughter and the sister.
She was only 9?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
And Elizabeth, rightfully so, was so mad at her daughter for this testimony that she became incoherent with rage and had to be removed from the courtroom for the child to testify. Because she was so mad at her daughter for like lying about all of this. Yeah. She's like, you're literally getting me killed right now.
Hello.
Yeah. But all 3 were found guilty. Sorry, we overheated. We're back. So it was Jeanette that made it to where they all got found guilty, basically. The next day it was the turn of Anne Redfern, Alice Nutter, Catherine Hewitt, Jane and John Bullock, Allison herself, Isabel, and that Margaret Pearson. The evidence against the accused was even thinner than the day before, except in the case of Allison Davis, because clearly she was the one that started all of this and she was like, yeah, I'm guilty. I think she actually really did think she had power after like being raised in a family where there was like a bunch of witches and things going on, or magic healing situations. I think that when that happened, she was like, oh my God, I'm way more powerful than I thought I was.
I'm a powerful witch.
Yeah, I'm way more powerful than I thought I was. So pretty much every single one of the witches that was put into this situation, the only one that didn't get hung and only got sent to the pillory was Margaret Pearson. And it was because she had not killed anyone. She was the only one that wasn't found of killing anyone. So her case was more of like a misdemeanor. Mm-hmm. But everyone else was sentenced to be hung.
Okay.
And the next day after those 2 days of trial, it was like trial. And then they were hung the very next day at Lancaster Castle.
Were they like all hung at the same time, I'm sure?
I don't know if they just like got in a line. I think that normally they would like get in a line and you'd see the person getting like, and it would just add on to your torture.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of like a caveat here. So 5 of the Pendle witches did admit to the witchcraft and the rest didn't. Many of the accused seemed kind of out of place from the original defendants. So like the 2 families, those kind of seemed like, yeah, all right, they're witches, right?
Yeah.
But there was all these other people like the Isabel person and Margaret, and there were certain people that were just added in that it was like,
why are you here?
Why are they getting added into this? They didn't have the same like social status or anything like that. And so Jeanette Pearson was one of those people. She was the other Jeanette in the story. She was the one that was sentenced to the town over for the witchcraft and came and apparently had said that she wanted help getting her accuser. It seems that she was attached to this list of witches because she had a long-standing grudge with this man named Thomas Lister. And he is actually the one who tried to prosecute her earlier on in time. Like he was the one that tried to point his finger at her and she got acquitted from that. So Lister was the son of Preston's former employer, and Lister Sr. favored Preston. So then Lister, the son, thought that they were having an affair together and that she was his mistress.
Okay.
And
mind your business.
Well, he accused his death because his dad died. He accused his death of her, like her fault.
Okay.
And Lister was also acquainted with Roger Nowell, which was the magistrate in charge of the Pendle stuff. Mm-hmm. So then whenever she was acquitted and then that meeting happened just days later, it was very fitting that her name suddenly is put back into this mix. And then Roger Nowell himself had his own agenda. In early 1612, every justice of the peace had been ordered to compile a list of those who refused to attend Protestant church services. So in other words, you couldn't be a secret Catholic.
Yeah.
And Roger Nowell was one of the magistrates who had agreed to round up and prosecute the Catholics. So the elements of the witches using Catholicism in their prayers just made it to where it was like he could throw this net and it caught witches and Catholics at the same time.
Yeah.
And then Alice Nutter was also a victim of this same, didn't belong here, but was put into it. She came from a very, very, very Catholic family, and her conviction of witchcraft was based off non-existent evidence and would have sent out a very strong message to other Catholics that they weren't safe if they continued to like resist the Reformation that was happening. Yeah. So while the Pendle witch trials are some of the most memorable to occur in England, the deadliest witch hunts in English history unfolded between 1642 and 1651. A young man named Matthew Hopkins named himself the Witchfinder General.
Okay.
Isn't that what you want to name yourself?
Yes.
The Witchfinder General? Hopkins, along with his associate John Stern, took it upon themselves to root out witches. Between 1644 and 1647, their campaign led to the trial and execution of more people for witchcraft than all of the previous century combined. Hopkins in England itself.
Stop.
Yeah. So Hopkins claimed to have special knowledge and techniques for detecting witches, but his methods were pretty much the exact same that everyone else had been using. So he did watching, as we mentioned in the last one, where they keep you awake for hours and hours and hours and then ask you questions, leading questions at that. So you're delirious and you're like, I killed that guy. And then they're like, guilty. Another one was called Swimming the Witch, where they accused they threw the accused into the river, and if they floated, they were a witch, and if they drowned, then they weren't.
But now they're dead anyway, so it
Either
doesn't
way,
matter.
you're gonna die. And so one thing I actually learned today, because I was listening to another podcast on the way here, trying to just refine my brain.
Yeah.
When they did that, they would tie one finger from one hand and a toe from the opposite foot together, so it made it like impossible to swim.
Okay. Relax.
Yeah, and one of the reasons they did the water situation is because witches were like had renounced baptism or whatever like that, so they were supposed to be basically like allergic to water.
Please.
So they would be able to like basically walk on water, I guess,
my
or
God.
evade the water. So that's why they would be able to float.
Get out of here.
But he also did the same thing where he stripped people for their witch's mark, which we talked about that, and it's disgustingness. Yeah. And of course, through this torture, confessions flowed freely, and terrified prisoners implicated neighbors and family members, which made the panic spread once more. And then Hopkins and Stern traveled from town to town, offering their services to frightened communities. They were paid for their work, which made critics think of them, badly because they're profiting off this fear. And within a few short years, over 300 people were accused, and perhaps 100 to 200 were executed, most of them being hanged. The sheer number of trials alarmed Parliament, which at first tolerated Hopkins' work and actually let himself call himself the Witchfinder General. But then they began questioning him, and so by 1647, criticism was mounting, and Hopkins himself actually published a pamphlet called The Discovery of Witches to defend his methods, arguing that witchcraft was a grave threat and his actions were lawful. But not long afterward, he died at only the age of 27 or 28, possibly of tuberculosis.
Oop.
His short career, however, had left devastation in its wake. The reign of Matthew Hopkins marked the high point of the witch persecution in England, and never before or after were so many people accused and executed in such a concentrated period.
That guy sounds like a freaking nerd, dude.
That is crazy work. Who wants to travel around? And it's also said that, he was partnered with John Stern. So it was said that I think John Stern was older and was like, okay, dude, I really want to go home to my family. Like, I am over this. And Hopkins was so young that he was like, no.
I ain't got nothing else to do.
Yeah, I'm going to go find these witches. He's probably like a guy that no one wanted to marry. And so he was like
hated
after every woman. He hated women.
Freaking nerd, dude. I'm telling you.
I just can't imagine wanting to travel around the world. And yeah.
What else were you supposed to do back then, I guess? If you weren't a witch,
And
you got to hunt witches,
You're one or the other.
Yeah, there's only two options.
That is so insane.
Ay.
Yeah. All right, now we're going into Salem.
Yes!
So even though it was only a single year of madness, the panic in a small Puritan village has lived on in the American imagination for over 3 centuries. I cannot talk today.
You're doing fine.
I just tongue-tied every single word in that sentence. So in Salem, 19 men and women were hanged, with one man being pressed to death. So there's a total of 20 deaths.
Oh my.
Salem is not remembered necessarily because of its uniqueness, but how concentrated and dramatic it was. Because all the other witch trials we've talked about were over like centuries of time periods, not just 1 year. So there was a ton of deaths, but they were over like 12, 20, 30 years, whatever it may be.
That's what I was going to say. Like all these other ones have so many more like higher death numbers, but this is a shorter, condensed amount of
It
time.
was just like this. Salem was literally like barely over a year long.
Oof.
So in the late 1600s, Salem Village wasn't the quaint witch-themed town tourists visit like it is today. The village itself was actually split into two. There was Salem Town, and it was the one that was near the coast. It had wealth, and it was connected to trade, and it is what is now Salem.
Okay.
So it was like it was like a port city, basically. And then roughly 10 miles away, there was Salem Village, which now is what is called Danvers, Massachusetts.
Okay.
But it was more inland, it was poor, and it was filled more with like struggling farmers. You're more inland. So Salem Village was a Puritan settlement built deep in the Massachusetts wilderness. They saw their New England colony as the New Jerusalem. So it was supposed to be a holy community chosen by God to live purely and righteously. Their leader, John Winthrop, called it a city upon a hill, meaning their behavior should set the example for the rest of the world. It was supposed to, like, the Puritans basically believed that, like, if you did not live directly by the Bible, you were in league with the devil, you were wrong, you were bad. Like,
Yes.
that was the only thing that they believed in. If you frolicked in the woods with your friends because your little girls frolicking in the woods with your friends, you're not good. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to have an imagination. You're not supposed to have fun. You're supposed to do what the Bible says, and that's it.
Wow, what a life.
Yeah. So also at this point in time, they're living in the woods, as I mentioned. It's a dense forest, and they're terrified of anything that they couldn't explain with the Bible. So they couldn't explain Native Americans, and Native Americans are pissed because we're encroaching on their land. Rightfully so.
Correct.
So they're hiding out in the woods. And so the woods are seen as this just like devil sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
And they also thought Native Americans were kind of bad people. One, because they were killing people. But two, they didn't speak their language. And they also didn't have the same religious beliefs, which meant they automatically were in league with Satan. Like they weren't who they were supposed to be. They weren't Puritans. They weren't pure, basically. Yeah. And so the Native Americans scared the shit out of them. So the woods scared them. So did the Native Americans. Smallpox breaks out.
Oh boy.
So there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
Right before all of this occurs in Salem. And the Puritans believed that the world was locked in a constant spiritual battle between God and Satan. So if someone broke the rules, questioned the church, or lived differently, it was just seen as bad behavior, and it was a threat to the entire covenant of God, which is so extreme.
So extreme.
If I was a little girl in that city, I probably would have been burned.
Oh, I would have been burned at the stake immediately
and hung because they would have been like the like blah blah blah
blah blah blah
blah blah blah. Her. But really, they would have like come at me. There's no way.
Oh.
I'm going home. I'm not recording anymore.
Oh, that's funny.
God, and we have to record 2 more episodes like tomorrow.
Yep. It's gonna be fun.
Maybe I can get it together by then.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
Probably not.
You'll be fine. Everything's gonna be great.
But yeah, so basically, Puritans were like, the devil is everywhere. If you're not good, you're bad. You ain't first, you're last.
Don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
Oh, I'm so sorry for anyone who listens to us. Oh, goodness gracious. So regardless of the strict religion, Salem was a divided town anyways because there was 2 powerful families, the Putnams and the Porters.
Ah, okay.
These families each had wealth, land, and influence, and they had already been fighting for decades before the witch trials had began on how the village should be run and if they should break away from Salem town. So they were trying to make Salem's 2 completely different places. There's Salem town, Salem village. And so there was just this big fight here. And in 1689, through the influence of the Putnams, Samuel Parris comes into the picture. And he had come to Salem after being a failing merchant in Barbados, and he was now going to become the pastor in the village.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Sure. Whatever.
Go for it.
But he brought with him his wife, his 3 children, who included young Betty Parris, his niece Abigail Williams, and an enslaved woman named Tituba. So every time I've ever learned about the Salem witch trials, every time I hear Abby Williams, I'm like, you're killing me. Every time. Every time. Shout out. Because I'm pretty sure she listens.
She does. Love you, Abs.
Really, literally every time. I remember like when we learned Salem witch trials was probably like 7th grade, 6th grade, where I knew of Abby anyways. And I was like,
she's a witch.
Yeah, I was like, what? But yeah, so when Parris entered the picture, Salem had already gone through 3 ministers. So he actually was the only one that was ordained, which is weird. But like they would elect their ministers. Like it was up to the town to say, yeah, they could be our minister or not. So there was people who supported him and there was people who weren't, because there was people who supported the Putnams and there was people who did not because they were supporting the Porters. And he was with the Putnams. So already just this divide between
Wonderful.
That's starting out strong.
Yeah.
So each minister previously had left because they were fighting about wanting more land, more salary, and the church discipline wasn't what they wanted it to be. Like it was either too much or too little. And so when he showed up, he was already stepping into this just battlefield, but he didn't play his cards right. He almost immediately started asking for more money, more free things, and the ownership of the house in which the ministers lived. So there's a lot of religions still to this day, like the church that like my dad goes to. The pastor lives at the church.
Yes.
And it's just part of like his salary is basically like housing, like almost like military. You get a house, you get a vehicle, like it's just part of it kind of.
Yeah.
And so that's how they were all living, is there was like a minister house there. And he was like, oh, well, I want to own it. I don't want to just like have it as part of my job. Like I want to own it and I need you to pay me more. And they're in a village that's already struggling with money, which is why they're trying to like figure out, should we be part of Salem Town or Salem Village or not? Because Salem Town has more money and they're doing better. Like, what should we do here?
Mm-hmm.
It's already poor, struggling farmers.
Yeah.
And he's like, give me more.
Boy.
Which half the farmers were like, aren't you supposed to like be a man of God that's like humble?
Yeah.
And is just like happy that you're here.
Not greedy.
Yeah. They're like, you're greedy. What is this about? You're doing the exact same thing that all these other people did right away. So on top of that, his sermons were also a problem. He was constantly preaching about the corruption within his congregation, the influence of the devil, and the disobedience of those who challenged the church's leadership, meaning himself. Yeah, he had a habit of turning every disagreement into a spiritual war and claimed that anyone who opposed him was under Satan's influence. So many villagers began to resent him because they left church feeling like they were beaten up and not lifted up.
Right.
Which I went to a church like that in college and I left and I would leave. I went I think 2 or 3 times and I was like, absolutely not. I'm not leaving church to feel like shit about myself.
I've been attacked.
Like I was supposed to go to church and feel good.
Yeah.
Like I'm supposed to feel happy that I went there today. And I felt like I was the most horrible human being on the planet.
Yeah.
I was like,
not for me.
Didn't like that. Felt that right there. That alone will make you not want to go to church.
Yeah,
genuinely.
absolutely.
So, but even his supporters sometimes admitted that Paris seemed more obsessed with power than salvation. And as previously mentioned, he was brought here by the Putnams, so he stood with them very openly, which meant that anyone who did not believe him, as he had his authority, then that means that they didn't align with the Putnams either. Which is not a good, again, it's just furthering that divide there.
Yeah.
So let's get us to where the events begin to unfold. It all began in January of 1692, when 2 of the girls who lived in the Reverend's home began to act strangely. One of them was his 9-year-old daughter, Betty, and then the other one was his 11-year-old niece, Abby. They started to scream during prayers. They would contort their bodies. They would throw things. They were claiming invisible hands were stroking them and pinching them and biting them and poking at them and everything like that. All of the adults were around them were like, what in the absolute hell is going on? Like, what?
Yeah.
And so they brought in the village doctor, William Griggs, and he declared that the girls were under an evil hand. He was like, I don't know what's wrong with them. They're not just sick.
Yeah.
So it's the devil.
Obviously.
Clearly.
Yeah.
So Mary Sibley, which was a neighbor of the Paris' family, suggested a little, I can't really say ritual, but she suggested that they bake a witch cake.
Like a cleanse.
She was, No.
Oh, with the children.
Yeah, with the children.
Oh.
Well, no.
Oh.
Well, just pause. Now I don't know what I'm thinking anymore.
They're going to bake a cake with the children.
Hansel and Gretel? Are we for real right now? No. So she was like, hey, Tituba, because Tituba is the servant, make a witch cake. Okay. So what you do is you take the afflicted girl's urine, just a little sample of their pee, mix it with rye and meal and ashes and bake it into a cake. Then you're going to feed it to a dog, specifically a black dog. And if there is a witch that is controlling these girls, when the dog eats the cake, the witch is going to start screaming because it's hurting her. So the girls aren't going to start screaming, but the witch who has
control
bewitched
of them. Okay.
is going to start screaming and freaking the hell out.
Okay.
Never happened.
Oh. Dang.
Yeah. But this... just baking this cake alone was a sin to the Puritans because they were using magic instead of prayer.
Yeah.
And even though Mary Sibley meant well, Reverend Paris saw this as sorcery.
Right.
Yeah. So when he learned that Tituba made that cake in his own home, he was like, oh, the devil is real. It is moving through my home. It is moving through this town. Like, It freaks everybody out, right? He starts to really lose his mind. So then more girls in the village at this point are starting to do the same thing. Ann Putnam Jr., Mercy Lewis, Mary Walcott, and Elizabeth Hubbard. They would wail. They would say they saw shadowy figures. They were seeing spectral creatures. They were seeing the devil himself. Like, do you not remember that video where it's just these girls and they're just like screaming in agony for no reason? And they're like in their bed trying to like pat them with their little cold wash rags.
Yeah, I
and
do a
like,
little bit. Yeah.
So now, pressured by Paris to identify their tormentor, Betty and Abigail claimed to have been bewitched by Tituba. And then they also blamed 2 other women in the community who were like marginalized citizens. They were already like outcasts. They already didn't go to church. Sarah Good was one of them, and she was known to be a beggar. And then Sarah Osborne, who was an elderly woman who was scorned because she had once had a romantic involvement with her indentured servant. So they point to, devil. They point to these 2 people immediately. So a little bit about Tituba. She was the enslaved woman that lived in the Paris' household, the Reverend's household. She was said to have potentially been from Barbados. Okay, sorry, another camera problem. I bought a new vlogging camera, so we were trying to use it, and it, I guess only works in like shorter. We're gonna have to figure that out more. Might have to buy a different camera.
Womp womp.
Womp womp. What camera do y'all use? Honestly, what the hell?
I know.
Because this one, part of the reason that our videos will be like 11 minutes long and then have that weird like follow us screen, because it stops recording for a second and then it'll start recording again.
Yeah.
So we had to make do with that. So I'm not sure what the deal is there. But anyways, we were talking about Tituba. It is said that she was either of African-American descent or like an Indian, but more of like Barbados descent. I'm like, what is the right word there?
What's the word?
But it was most likely that Tituba probably cared for these girls like on a daily basis. She probably cooked for them, comforted them, and told them stories of magic, spirits, omen, and dreams that came from her culture. So in any other place, these stories would have been harmless. It would have just been like their servant talking to their kids and helping raise them and telling them basically bedtime stories. But in this Puritan village, it was seen as just not allowed. Like that was some sorcery that she was even telling them that.
Yeah.
And so it's also said that Abby and Betty had learned a divination trick from Tituba, and that this divination trick is what started every single bit of the Salem witch trials.
What?
So it is said that you could put water in a glass, like a clear glass, to where you could see it still. You would take an egg, crack your egg into it, but not the yolk, just the egg whites. And then whatever shape it made was going to tell you what your future husband, like what his profession was. So if it was like a pickaxe, then you would know he would be some kind of like miner or something like that. If it was like just like a normal axe, he would probably be like some sort of logger or like a builder. And so these girls did this, and you have to think in a village of that size, then you can most likely be like,
figure out who it's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's also said that, much similar to the divination story that I've told many times about the mirror, that if you saw like a skull or a coffin, it means you would die before you got married. And so it is said that they saw a coffin. And the very next day,
all this started.
Everything started.
That seems a little bit dramatic.
A little crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on March 1st, 2 magistrates from Salem town, John Hawthorne and Jonathan Corwin, went to the village to start conducting like an inquiry. They were going to start asking people questions. And both Osborne and Sarah Good protested their innocence, even though Good now accused Osborne.
Girls.
Girls, relax. There was one video I watched, and it was really, I don't know. I don't. It's a girl. It was just like a TikTok, and she was supposed to be like Abby Williams or whatever, the older one that's like 11 or whatever. And she's like, "But boys, look at me!" And she's like poking your chest out, and she's like, "I have titties. Like, talk to me." And then she's like, "You don't want to talk to those girls," which. Like, it was a really, really funny TikTok.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, I've got to like, maybe if I can just tag the in our notes, because it was hilarious.
Bless her.
It was really funny. But so Tituba was interrogated now. She was interrogated for hours, and she denied the charges at first. But Reverend Paris, which is supposed to be this like God-fearing holy man, is the one who was basically torturing her into her confessions. And she started to confess. She's like, yeah, there was this tall man in black. He had a great book in his hand, and he made me write my name in it. And when I was writing my name in it, I saw there was like 10 other people's names in it, and 2 of them were Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne. What?
Clock it.
Yeah, she said I couldn't read the other names, but I could read those 2 and I knew mine. So now there's like 13 of us. She said there was black dogs, red cats, yellow birds, and witches who flew through the night sky. Ooh, I looked up why brooms were potentially, that's a total sidebar, but I did look up why brooms were potentially like used. And it said, 1, it was a household item that pretty much everyone had at that time. And you always kept it at your back door. So it would be like that's just where you because you would sweep stuff out your back door. And so it's kind of just like a general household item that could be used.
Okay.
Have you seen the new Hocus Pocus?
Yeah.
Where
No,
they're
but
they're flying around on like vacuums and stuff.
Yeah, where they have like Roombas and shit.
Yeah. But yeah, so it was basically said it was probably like a household item. But then a lot of like magic trinkets and things like that had to do with like sticks and things like that. And brooms were always made of like sticks and
straw. Yeah.
So
fair enough.
There wasn't like a huge, it kind of said that it almost was like depicted in one drawing. And then from there, it just kind of stopped.
Lame.
Yeah. So there wasn't really a big mad scientist behind it.
Damn.
But anyways, yes. So she claimed that the devil promised her freedom if she served him. And her words were terrifying to the villagers because if what she said was true, then the devil wasn't just lurking in the wilderness. It was now in Salem Village.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
So then her confession did 2 things. It confirmed to the village's worst fears that witchcraft was real and it was spreading. And then it also suggested that there was another vast conspiracy of witches, which is basically how all the other witch trials were, where it was like, oh, no, there's a whole entire league of them. They're all coming for us.
Please.
Sir. So over the next few weeks, the girls accused more and more people, ordinary neighbors, churchgoers, and even respected citizens. By March and April of 1692, I don't know why I keep saying that, 1692, hysteria had consumed the village. The accused were questioned publicly, often while the afflicted girls were behind them, screaming and convulsing and saying that they're seeing their specters, which is like their ghosts are leaving their body or whatever, their souls are leaving their bodies, and coming and pitching them and doing all of this crazy shit. So Martha Corey was a well-known church member. She was accused, and when she laughed at the absurdity of it, the girls fell to the ground shrieking that her spirit was attacking them. And then Rebecca Nurse was a kind and elderly woman known for her charity, and she was also accused. I think that if I was any woman in a village at that point in time, I would have been like, I am not safe here.
Yeah.
Even if I've been the nicest person, which I'm nice until you cross me. So I probably had enemies.
But like, what are we doing?
I got to get out of there.
We got to get the hell out of here.
There's no safety here.
No.
Because it really does show like people who thought that they were safe from these trials, like those girls aren't going to put their finger at me. And then they're like, her. And you're like, well, why?
What did I do? Yeah.
So in May of 1692, Massachusetts had a governor named Willip Phipps, and he established a court. It was called the Court of Oyer and Terminer, meaning to hear and determine. The court's judges were led by William Sawton, and he believed wholeheartedly in the devil's power. And they also allowed one of the most dangerous forms of evidence that has ever occurred in the world. They allowed spectral evidence to be used.
Oh, okay.
So there didn't have to be like real physical evidence. It could be like it literally could be the girl saying, well, she's pinching me in my sleep and I see her standing at the end of my bed in my dreams.
And they're like, yep,
spectral
write that down.
right there, because that means she's astro projecting, I guess. Or I don't even think they knew that was at that time. But
Yeah,
they're like, oh, that
definitely
means
not.
she's with you.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's
Sorry. So basically, if you were accused, you're done. That's it. You're guilty.
You have no way of getting out of that after you're accused.
No, there's nothing you can do about that. So one of the first to be tried and executed was a woman named Bridget Bishop. She was a 6-year-old woman known for her outspoken nature and the tavern that she ran. So that's clearly just scandalous in the Puritan eyes. It's also said that she was known for wearing like scarlet and red. So they were like, devil. So witnesses claimed that her specter appeared at night, that their chickens died after she cursed them, and that she bewitched men with her boldness. Ooh. When asked if she was guilty, she said simply, I am innocent. I know nothing of it. But the jury didn't believe her, and on June 10th, 1692, Bridget Bishop was hanged on Gallows Hill, the first victim of the Salem witch trials. So Gallows Hill is where they all did eventually get hung, except for Giles Corey, which we'll get to him. And they actually didn't even take you all the way up to the top of this hill because they're lazy, I guess. So they took you to Gallows Hill, which is just kind of like up this thing. They actually didn't even have like a hanging platform either. They hung you from a tree. So the tree is still there. So I'm going to go see the tree when I go in a couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah.
But it was also said that once they were hung and executed and dead, they would just kind of like kick their bodies down the hill. And sometimes they were buried in like a really shallow grave, but there would still be like sometimes their shoes would be hanging out still, or like their nose, like depending on how they ended up in that area.
Yeah.
Or Gallows Hill is also between like this like kind of like mountainous, so their bodies would be just like kind of thrown into the crevices.
Oh.
And so there is actually like 2 people out of the 20 that people know where their bodies are actually buried.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that it's kind of hidden, but some of the families would go retrieve the bodies later on.
Yeah.
And bury them secretly.
Yeah.
But
in a real grave.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
But they didn't even get the respect of burying them how they were supposed to.
Right.
Which is what's, which was like the difference here is we didn't burn anybody.
Yeah.
But the whole reason that people were burned overseas is because it was to not leave the body of
a witch
to where the devil could still use her body.
Yeah.
Or his body, whoever's it was.
Yeah.
And so it was like, and then there's a guy in here, which we talked about him in a little bit. His name is Cotton Mathers. And Cotton Mathers literally said that the devil doesn't die. And
Correct.
so it's like, but why would you not actually bury their body then?
Yeah. I'm so confused. Wow.
Because he said
Logic.
He said that in relation to the making witches swim, if they float or not. He was like, well, witches don't die. So
that's not going to work.
Yeah. And at some point in time, there was dogs that were executed because they thought the dogs. Yeah. They killed 2 dogs in all of this.
Oh my God.
Killed 2 dogs. And as soon as he killed one of them, he was like, oh, well, it died and the devil doesn't die. So maybe it wasn't actually.
Yeah. You piece of crap.
Yeah.
Come on, man. At some point, you got to realize, get your head out of your ass.
Well, it's got to be like, have you not seen Practical Magic in 1692? Are you kidding me? She jumps down from the gallows and she lives. So how are they not scared of that? How are they not like, oh, she's a witch. She's just going to jump out of the gallows and survive.
Yeah.
Gross.
They just wanted to kill people.
Yeah. So after Bridget's
Bastards.
So after Bridget's death, the executions accelerated. By July, 5 women, Sarah Good, Rebecca Nurse, Susanna Martin, Elizabeth Howe, and Sarah Wilds, were hanged. By August, the nooses tightened once more. This time around, George Burroughs, a former minister who could recite the Lord's Prayer perfectly, was placed on the gallows.
Oh.
Because it was claimed that like the devil was not able to do that. And he literally went up there and they went and got him he had left. He was not a minister there anymore. They went and got him and brought him back to Salem to try him and hang him as a witch.
For why? Just because?
Yep, because he was a witch. Duh. Yeah. So
oh my God.
They brought him back, killed him anyway. Then came Martha Carrier, John Willard, and John Proctor, who had publicly criticized the trials. And then John Proctor's wife, Elizabeth, was pregnant, so her hanging was delayed.
Mm-hmm.
And then by September, Martha Corey and Mary Eastie, sister of Rebecca Nurse, were condemned. And one man, Giles Corey, so Martha Corey's husband, he would not plead guilty or innocent. So all of these people, they put a plea in. Everybody else except him put a plea in of not guilty. Yeah. Clearly. But they were hung anyways. Mm-hmm. If you said not guilty, you were going to get hung. If you said guilty, there was a lot of people, because there was over like 200 people who were still, these aren't the only people that were imprisoned. But if you basically said, yeah, I'm guilty, I'm sorry, then you most of the time were released from prison. But whenever you got accused at all, your land was taken. So you're homeless.
Oh, you have nothing?
Yeah. So a lot of these people probably said, no, I'm not guilty, because then all of their stuff gets taken.
Yeah.
Like these people who...
They're like, whatever.
These people who were like, yeah, I'm guilty, they had to go start life somewhere else, which might have been better.
Well, yeah.
But they had nothing to do that. Like they had to like try and figure out how to get somewhere else to
start
try
over.
That. Yeah.
Wow.
So Giles Corey was like, I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no, I'm not saying anything. And so as a form of torture, they started to press him with stones. So he was pressed with stones, adding more and more weight for 2 days, because he didn't want to say yes or no, because he had children that he wanted his land to go to. He didn't want to say yes or no, because then his land couldn't get taken by the government. And so the last thing he ever said was more weight, because he ended up dying from that.
King.
Yeah. Try me.
Go off.
Crazy though.
Wow.
So it wasn't used.
Like
that's where a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, that was used as his execution. No, he wasn't supposed to die. He was supposed to be tortured and say one way or the other. And he never did. He took it to his death.
Wow.
But there's even, it's said, I couldn't say that it's full factual proof. It's said that either the judge or like the sheriff, someone got so fed up with him that they like crushed his head with their boot. It's said, but I couldn't prove that one way or the other.
That takes a lot of force. Me.
I don't want to think about
I
that.
don't like that.
But by September of 1692, the gallows had claimed 19 lives. The people of Salem were exhausted, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. The village reeked of fear. Families were whispering of ghosts haunting the fields. Cows were refusing to give milk. And even the judges began to wonder if they'd gone too far. But
You don't say.
Crazy concept there. So the accusations that were so believable at one point in time, now they started to kind of seem absurd. And one of the most respected religious figures in the colonies, his name was Increase Mather. He was Cotton Mather's father. He broke his silence. He said that he was uneasy with all of this and the spectral evidence just didn't make any sense to him. And he declared that the General Court of Massachusetts, he said it were better that 10 suspected witches should escape than one innocent person be condemned. And so for Puritans, that was pretty radical thinking and dangerous, but it worked and the tide began to turn. So he's kind of who was like, hey, we should probably stop killing people. Like killing one wrong person is better than letting 10 of them go. 10 of the wrong people go. Like just let them go.
Yeah.
And so Governor William Phipps, returning from his military expedition, was horrified by what he had found. He is the one who had put together, or Phipps, he's who'd put together the court of Ori and Oral and Terminer and Oral or whatever it is.
Toil and trouble.
Yeah, basically. So there was over 200 people accused. Prisons were overflowing. Property was seized. Children were orphaned. He was like, this is crazy. His own wife was whispered to be a witch. And he was like, on October 29th, 1692, he dissolved the Court of Oyer. I'm like, I know it sounded like oyster. Oyer and Terminer. The executions did stop, and the new court was established in early 1693, and it was the Superior Court of Judicature.
Ooh.
And this time, spectral evidence was not allowed.
Thank God.
So many of the accused were still in jail, and it was cold. They were cold and hungry and chained. But since spectral evidence was no longer a thing, pretty much everyone was released because there's no real evidence.
Imagine that.
Crazy. And so Elizabeth Proctor, whose husband has already been hung, and she was pregnant, she actually ended up being spared and set free finally after giving birth in prison.
Oh my God.
And no longer has a husband.
And now she doesn't have a husband. Ew.
But let me circle back to little Tituba here. She pretty much was erased. She rotted in jail and got bought by a new master, and no one heard of her ever again. So they don't think she died from any of it, but no one really knows what happened to her. Like her record was like wiped clean.
Interesting.
Yeah. So after all of this, families demanded justice. Petitions were sent to the general court. And for years, the colony tried to make amends, though no apology could ever undo what had been done.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1697, the Massachusetts General Court declared a day of fasting and prayer for the tragedy. Judge Samuel Sewall, one of the magistrates, stood before his church and publicly confessed his guilt, saying, I desire to take the blame and shame of it, praying that God, who has infinite mercy, would forgive me and the others concerned. Reverend Parris, on the other hand, refused to repent and was eventually forced out of the village.
Yeah, that guy sucks.
Yeah. And by 1711, the government granted financial reparations to surviving families. The amount was small, only about 600 euros at that time, and it was divided among all of them.
Oh.
Yeah. It was a little comfort for those who lost mother, fathers, and wives and sons, but didn't really do anything.
Here's 1 penny.
Here's $1.
Penny for your thoughts.
Some scholars have suggested that there was like this fungus outbreak. Have you ever heard that theory? That they were cooking it, and so like the girls had all eaten it. It was like in their bread, and it was like the same level of like LSD, so it was making them hallucinate, and that's one theory.
Interesting. No, I have not heard that.
Well, the truth is probably simpler. The trials were not really about witches. They were about power, property, and the preservation of Puritan identity. So witchcraft was simply just the word they used to fight their battle, and it was a way to accuse, punish, and eliminate those on the wrong side, whether you were a Putnam.
I hate that.
Or a porter. So if you look closely at the names, patterns start to emerge. Thomas Putnam filed or helped write dozens of formal complaints, far more than anyone else. And Putnam and Parris, they're on the same team here, right? So any of the Putnams. Many of the accused were people the Putnams had legal or financial disputes with. So if you supported Reverend Parris, which meant you supported the Putnams, you were left alone. But if you criticized him, you ended up on trial or in jail. Anne Putnam Jr., she is one of the girls that started to be afflicted. She's the daughter of Thomas and Ann Putnam, which meant she was on Reverend Parris's side. She was the ringleader of the afflicted circle. And then Mercy Lewis was the Putnam servant. So she was another girl who was afflicted by this.
Yeah.
And ended up being with probably best friends with Ann Putnam, which probably meant she was best friends with Betty Ann Parris and Abigail Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mary Walcott was also a close family friend of Anne Jr., the Putnam. So a lot of the girls who were the ones that were afflicted and pointing fingers at everybody, they were all friends and all basically under Putnam rule.
Big Mean Girls Club vibes.
Yeah. So it's no coincidence that the first major wave of accusations targeted people like Rebecca Nurse, who was a respected woman from a Porter-aligned family, John Proctor, a successful, outspoken man who had criticized the girls' behavior. Like, he was like, why are they doing that? That's crazy. Martha Corey and Mary Easty, both independent thinkers who questioned the trials. The witchcraft panic gave the Putnam faction a powerful moral weapon. They could frame their personal enemies as enemies of God.
That's just crazy, though. Like, why are we doing all that? Y'all doing too much.
Yeah, and like I said, your land is seized. Everything is taken from you. So there's people benefiting from that.
Right.
And so you're clearing out these evil people, but it's more of like Puritans were just trying to get rid of people that weren't Puritans. But in that, are they acting like Puritans?
No. Absolutely not. I mean, maybe in their eyes. I don't know. But.
So all of this is based off of Heinrich Kramer and his Malleus Maleficarum, if you remember that guy, right?
That freaking guy. Yeah, that nerd.
The guy who wrote his Malleus Maleficarum in like the 1400s.
Uh-huh. Is he back? Oh,
well,
no.
it's 1692, so no.
2,000 years later.
We're looping back to him, but we're going back here because, as I've mentioned, the hammer of witches and the impact it had on the witch trials. But let us hear first what happened to Heinrich before he ever even wrote the Malleus Maleficarum.
Okay.
In 1485, Heinrich Kramer was a Dominican inquisitor already known for his obsession with witchcraft. He arrived in Innsbruck, Austria. He had been commissioned to investigate cases of heresy and sorcery in the region. At the time, rumors of witches were not uncommon, but most authorities treated them as isolated cases of superstition or folk practices. Nothing crazy, like I've said. Kramer, however, believed something far darker was at work, that witches were not only real, but part of a vast conspiracy with the devil himself. His arrival in Innsbruck was meant to stamp out this evil, but it ended up exposing his own fanaticism.
Ooh.
My heart's racing.
Ah!
The central figure of this drama was Helena Schuberin, a respected woman in the city. She had openly mocked Kramer, refusing to attend his sermons, and accusing him of being obsessed with witches to the point of absurdity. To Kramer, this defiance was proof enough that she was in league with the devil. He quickly built charges against her, accusing her and other women of demonic pacts, sorcery, and sexual relations with evil spirits. And his investigations became notorious for their focus on lurid details, especially concerning women's supposed carnal weakness and imagined intimacy with demons.
Oh, yeah.
Kramer's method shocked many. He used torture to force confessions, pressing women to admit to these impossible crimes. Under pain and duress, testimonies became contradictory, full of wild claims, and made little sense. And what disturbed observers most, however, was Kramer's obsessive fixation on sexual themes. His questioning lingered on intimate, humiliating details far beyond what was considered appropriate even in a witch trial. It was clear to the local clergy and authorities that this was not simply an inquisitor doing his job, it was a man consumed by his own dark fascinations. The case eventually reached the oversight of Bishop George Glosser of Brixen, who had the authority to review Kramer's work. Glosser was appalled at what he saw. He recognized that Kramer's investigations were neither sound nor godly, and he felt the inquisitor's unhealthy obsession was damaging the church's credibility. Finally, Glosser stepped in and suspended the trials altogether. He publicly denounced Kramer as unfit, calling him senile, unstable, and completely obsessed with the subject of witches. In Innsbruck, Kramer's reputation collapsed. Rather than being seen as a defender of the faith, he left the city a disgraced man, humiliated and rejected. But the story didn't end there. Instead of abandoning his cause, Kramer turned his humiliation into fuel. Within a year of the Innsbruck disaster, he wrote the Malleus Maleficarum.
What a little bitch boy.
So he had already done all of this. He had already held these trials, or tried to. And the sane people of Innsbruck were like, you're fucking crazy.
Yeah.
We're not doing that.
You dirty man.
And it pissed him off, and he went and he wrote this book that people followed for the next thousands of years.
My eye's twitching. You can't see it.
So the guy who wrote this book that everyone followed had already been shunned for what he was doing. And then people elsewhere were like, man, this guy's smart as hell. We're going to do what he says.
And he was just a sad little boy with his feelings hurt.
Yeah, who'd already been told he was fucking crazy for what he was doing. So then they all follow this absolute absurdity.
Where was this guy? Where was the people who said that shunned him? Austria?
Yes.
Where were you?
Oh, God.
Where were you?
I've been waiting to get that out. That's the part of it all that blows my mind. People followed the Malleus Maleficarum. That is why a lot of the witch trials took the turns that they did. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. A lot of the witch trials were about political power, shit like that.
But it wouldn't have started.
No. A lot of them followed the way that he said, you can lightly torture somebody to get a confession. You can lightly do this. Even though he'd already done all of it and people had already told him he was crazy, he got ostracized for it. And then people like made a living out of following his little passion project at the end of it all.
Ew. That is so hurtful.
Yeah, I've been holding that back.
That is crazy.
Isn't that insane work?
Wow, I never knew that. All because this little psychopath.
Little asshole. Got his feelings hurt. Little man over here. Yeah.
Ew. What was his name?
Heinrich Kramer.
Heinrich Kramer.
Malleus Maleficarum.
I have so many words.
Isn't it just dumbfounding?
Mm-hmm.
Which, don't get me wrong, like I said, a lot of the trials did occur because there was a lot of people who actually were scared. But it also was the prime opportunity to get rid of anybody you didn't like.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
I just don't understand. I still don't understand.
Yeah.
I do, don't get me wrong, but like.
Or if they had just been able to know what divination was, they didn't mean they'd had to practice it.
Yeah.
But if they were allowed to just think for themselves a little bit, just a little bit, a lot of these things wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So note to self, think for yourself.
Think for your freaking self, man. Don't follow blindly.
No, but that doesn't mean you have to not like the people who aren't thinking what you're thinking.
Amen.
It's not that hard. Not rocket science.
It is not.
No. Unless they're being like obscene and saying really hateful shit that you don't want to hear, stand up for yourself. You know?
Yeah.
Like there's a fine line. There's a fine line there of like yes and no.
Yeah.
So maybe don't listen to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Wow. Wow.
No words.
Just knowing that like we 100% would have been tried as witches.
Oh, 1,000%. 1,000%.
For like the most minuscule things.
Oh, I told Aaron though, I was like, I would have jumped up on that gallows and been like, I'm haunting all you motherfuckers. So
write that down.
Literally, like I was like, I would have been yelling at all of them. And he was like, well, that doesn't help the people that are getting hung up behind you. And I was like, well, I'm going to die either way. So let me just.
Themselves.
Well, there was one person in the Salem witch trials where she said like, I'm not a witch, but if you want me to be a witch, I will take the blame. Please spare the people behind me. Like, don't hang them too. Like, this is crazy. Like, just like, let me be all of it. And they didn't. They still hung multiple people after her.
That's so wild.
And that's where it is. It's almost like, do you just go quietly to not make it worse for everyone else?
Yeah.
Or do you curse them all? I think I would curse everyone and make them live in fear. Like, if you want to be like that,
you gonna remember me.
I'm gonna terrify the shit out of you. And I hope ghosts are real. I hope I can come back and just ruin your day.
Amen.
I'd be the skinwalker running around their freaking cabin so fast.
Scurrying around.
Tapping on windows. Be the black-eyed kid sitting on their front porch. I'd be everything I could be to just ruin their life.
I don't get no sleep because of y'all. Y'all ain't gonna get no sleep because of me. Exactly.
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, if you have thoughts on the Salem witch trial, any of the witch trials, really, let me know. Do we like Heinrich Kramer? I told you in the beginning you're gonna love him. I told you in the very beginning. I said you're gonna love Heinrich. Exactly what I said in the very beginning. after I said he was feverishly writing on his desk with his ink blotting everywhere. I said, you're going to love him. So tell me if you love him.
What a guy. What a guy.
But yeah, so let us know if you have any thoughts on the witch trials. If you have anything that you want mentioned, I can come back and add more. Because I feel like I skimmed over a lot, but it's because I had so much in there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so if you have anything, let us know. If you have any recommendations, stories. We've been getting a lot of listener stories recently. This last week, we've got a lot.
Oh, really? I haven't looked again.
Yeah, we like blew up. Like not blew up, physically. No, anyways, these horns, no, it's the horns on my head.
Yeah, they're bouncy. Boom, 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 it's cracking me up.
But yeah, we've got a lot of stories, so that's fun. Keep sending those in. And go like, follow, subscribe, do all the good things. And we'll see you around.
See you on Thursday.
Bye. Bye.